The wind howled across the dead plains of Mars, carrying red dust that never seemed to settle. The once proud human colony now lay in ruins, broken towers half buried in sand, metal bones of forgotten machines scattered like tombstones. Among the silence walked Ethan Cole, a man who had already lost everything worth living for. He moved slowly, one step at a time, wrapped in a torn survival suit. His helmet visor was cracked, but it still kept out most of the dust. The oxygen meter blinked red, yet he didn't care. Ethan had stopped caring long ago. He was a soldier, once a fighter in the Human Defense Corps, but now he was just another ghost on a dying world. Every night the same memory haunted him, the bright light, the screaming, the sound of his squad burning alive as alien ships rained fire from the sky. He had survived when the rest didn't, and he still didn't know why. The guilt sat inside his chest like a heavy stone. Ethan's scanner beeped softly, dragging him back to reality. The signal was faint, almost nothing, but it was there. A heartbeat. His brow furrowed. That couldn't be right. Mars was empty now. Everyone was dead or gone. He knelt down and checked again. The signal came from beneath the sand, deep underground. He hesitated. It could be a trap, maybe leftover alien tech or just a glitch. But something about it pulled him closer. He grabbed his shovel and began to dig. The dry sand cut at his gloves, and every strike echoed through the hollow silence of the wasteland. Minutes turned into hours. The red light of the setting sun painted the horizon, but Ethan didn't stop. Sweat dripped inside his helmet. His arms burned with pain, but the signal grew stronger, steadier, and then his shovel hit something solid. He brushed away the dirt and stared. A smooth surface, glass or something like it. Beneath it, faint blue light pulsed like a heartbeat. It wasn't a machine he had ever seen before. His heart began to race. He wiped more sand away until the shape became clear. It was a pod, large enough to hold a person. Ethan froze. Through the transparent shell he saw a face, pale, almost glowing, framed by silver hair that floated like mist. A girl. She looked human, but not quite. Her skin shimmered faintly under. The pod's light and strange markings glowed softly across her neck. He stumbled back, his mind spinning. No, that's impossible, he muttered to himself. The aliens didn't look like humans, not like this. Why would one of them be buried here alone? Curiosity fought against fear. He checked the pod's control panel, written in symbols he didn't understand. But his suit's translator managed to pick up a few words. Containment status. Suspended. The pod was still active. Whoever this girl was, she was alive. Ethan's hands shook as he pressed a few buttons trying to open it. The machine hissed, lights flickering. He stepped back as the glass began to melt away like ice. A gust of cold air escaped, hitting his face with the smell of ozone and something sweet, almost floral. The girl's chest rose weakly. Her eyes fluttered open, glowing faint blue in the dim light. Ethan couldn't move. For a moment it felt like time itself had stopped. She looked straight at him as if she had known him all her life, and whispered something so soft it almost got lost in the wind. Ethan. His blood ran cold. How did she know his name? Before he could react, the girl gasped and her body convulsed. The pod's alarms screamed. He reached out, trying to help, but the energy field threw him backward. Sparks danced in the air, and a pulse of blue light exploded around them. When he opened his eyes again, the pod was dark, silent. The girl lay motionless. Ethan crawled closer, checking her pulse. She was still alive, but barely. He lifted her carefully, feeling how fragile she was. She weighed almost nothing, like holding a dream. As he carried her back to his shelter, questions filled his head. Who was she? Why did she know his name? And what kind of creature would bury one of their own alive? The storm outside grew stronger. Lightning flashed in the red sky as Ethan struggled through the sand. For the first time in years, fear and purpose burned together in his chest. He didn't know it yet, but this strange encounter would change everything. When he reached the shelter, he laid her on his bed and covered her with a thermal blanket. The scanner still showed faint life signs. He sat beside her, exhausted, staring at her alien yet peaceful face. "Who are you?" he whispered. The girl didn't answer, but as the storm howled outside, a faint glow spread from her skin, lighting the room with an otherworldly shine. Then the same voice echoed softly, not from her lips but inside his mind. "They buried me because I knew the truth." Ethan froze. The voice faded, but the fear didn't. He looked toward the door, his soldier instincts screaming. Somewhere, in the distance beyond the storm, a low humming sound grew louder, something mechanical moving fast. He realized he wasn't alone out there. Something or someone was coming, and whatever it was, it knew he had found her. The storm raged for hours, shaking the walls of Ethan's shelter. Red dust slammed against the steel panels like waves against a ship. Inside, dim emergency lights flickered, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. Ethan sat near the girl, watching her chest rise and fall slowly. He still couldn't believe what he'd found. An alien girl, alive, buried in a pod deep under the Martian wasteland. And she had spoken his name. He checked the readings again. Her pulse was weak but steady. Her body temperature was low, almost too low for a human. The glowing lines on her skin had dimmed but didn't fade completely. They pulsed, as if alive. He didn't know what she was, but she wasn't human. Still, she looked more human than any alien he had ever fought. That alone was enough to twist his mind in confusion. He sat beside her and whispered, "Why were you buried out there?" His voice echoed softly in the empty shelter. He didn't expect an answer. But then her eyes flickered open. She gasped, her body shaking as if she were drowning in air. Ethan reached out instinctively, holding her up. "Easy," he said, trying to calm her. "You're safe now." Her gaze darted around the room, frightened, wild. Her pupils glowed faintly blue, adjusting to the light. When she finally looked at him, her lips trembled. "You are human?" she asked, her voice soft and broken, every word heavy with effort. Ethan froze. She spoke English, rough, slow, but clear enough to understand. "Yeah," he said carefully. "I'm human. My name's Ethan Cole. You know that, don't you?" The girl blinked, confusion clouding her face. "Ethan," she repeated, as if tasting the name. "It was in the message, before they buried me." His heart skipped. "Who buried you?" She looked down as if afraid to say the words. "My kind," she whispered. "They called me a traitor." Ethan didn't know what to say. "A traitor? For what?" "For mercy," she said, voice trembling. "For helping your people." The words hit him like a strike to the chest. A million questions filled his mind, but before he could ask, she winced in pain and grabbed her head. The glowing lines on her skin flared bright, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Ethan grabbed a wet cloth and placed it on her forehead. She relaxed slightly, breathing easier. When the storm outside finally died down, Ethan stepped out of the shelter to check for damage. The horizon was a red wasteland, calm again but lifeless. His scanner beeped softly, a signal again, faint but near. He frowned and scanned the skies. A few miles north, a strange pattern of lights blinked against the clouds. He zoomed in and froze. Drones, alien reconnaissance units. They were searching for something. He ran back inside. "We need to move," he said quickly. "Your people, they're out there." She sat up slowly, clutching the blanket around her. "They will find me," she whispered. "They always do." Ethan grabbed his rifle and began packing supplies. "Not if I can help it. I've been hiding from them for years." She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "Why help me?" He stopped. The question cut deep. Why was he helping her? He didn't even know. Maybe because she was helpless. Maybe because she wasn't trying to kill him. Or maybe because she had said his name. "Let's just say I hate seeing anyone buried alive," he said finally. She gave a faint, tired smile. "Then we share the same hate." As they prepared to leave, She touched the pod's broken shell one last time. The lights flickered weakly, and she whispered something in her language, soft, musical, and sad. Ethan watched, sensing the weight of her loss. They moved out under the dull glow of Mars's twin moons. The desert stretched endlessly before them, quiet except for the crunch of their boots. Ethan guided her through the narrow canyons where sensors wouldn't detect them, but his gut told him they weren't alone. The faint hum of engines followed them from a distance. After hours of walking, they reached an abandoned cargo outpost. Ethan set up camp and handed her some purified water. She drank carefully, eyes filled with gratitude. "You should not be kind to me," she said quietly. "If they find us, they will kill you too." He smirked dryly. "That's been true for a long time." She studied him for a long moment, then spoke softly. "My name is Lyra." "Lyra," he repeated. "Strange name. It means truth seeker in my language." Her gaze darkened. But truth is what they fear most. Before Ethan could ask more, his scanner started to beep again, louder this time. A red light blinked on the display. Something was moving fast toward them. Lyra stood up suddenly, her eyes glowing bright blue again. "They found us," she whispered. Ethan grabbed his rifle and turned toward the noise. The wind carried a low humming sound, metal wings cutting through the air. He saw the first drone appear over the ridge, red lights scanning the sand. "Inside," he shouted. They rushed back into the outpost as laser beams sliced through the air. The walls shook. Sparks flew. Lyra closed her eyes and raised her hands. Blue energy rippled from her palms, creating a shimmering barrier around them. The attack stopped as suddenly as it began. Outside, silence returned. Ethan looked at her in disbelief. "What was that?" She opened her eyes slowly, breathing hard. "They will not stop," she said. "They buried me because I knew what they did to your kind, and now they will come for you too." Outside in the dark sky, the drones regrouped. A single beam of red light shot upward, sending a signal to the alien warship waiting in orbit. And somewhere far above Mars, something ancient and powerful answered the call. The night sky above Mars burned red as the alien drones swept across the desert like vultures searching for bones. Their eyes glowed with cold light, cutting through the dust storms and broken ruins. Deep inside the old cargo outpost, Ethan Cole crouched beside Lyra, his heart pounding. The air smelled like ozone and rust, thick with fear. He peeked through a shattered window. The drones were everywhere now, moving in patterns too precise to be random. They were hunting, and Ethan knew what they wanted. Her Lyra sat still, eyes closed, her hands pressed to her temples. A faint blue glow pulsed through the cracks in her skin. She whispered in her alien tongue, voice trembling. "They found my signal, the pod. It called them." Ethan cursed under his breath. "Then we need to move before they close in." But she shook her head. "No, they already have. The Sky Hunters never miss twice." Outside, the wind grew stronger, swirling the red dust into spirals. Ethan checked his rifle and powered on his scanner. The map showed dozens of heat signatures closing in fast. He'd fought aliens before. Brutal soldiers made of armor and rage, but these drones were something else. Silent. Efficient. Cold. Lyra looked up at him suddenly, her blue eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "If they capture me, they will kill you." "You should run," Ethan almost laughed. "I've been running my whole life." It never helped. Before she could reply, the roof shook. A shadow passed overhead, massive, metallic, alive. Ethan grabbed Lyra and pulled her into the maintenance tunnel beneath the outpost, just as a beam of light sliced through the building, melting steel like butter. The ground rumbled and the sound of destruction filled the air. Dust rained down as they crawled through the narrow passage. Lyra's glow lit the way, painting the tunnel walls in soft blue light. "They know my kind betrayed me," she said, voice trembling. "They will not stop until my name is erased from memory." Ethan glanced back at her. "Then we'll make sure they fail." They emerged into the open desert, the cold wind biting against their skin. The drones hovered above the horizon, scanning with red beams that cut across the dunes. Ethan activated his old combat visor. It flickered, but it still worked. He spotted a narrow canyon nearby and led Lyra toward it. As they ran, Ethan heard the distant roar of engines. He turned just in time to see one of the drones spot them. "Go!" he shouted. Laser fire rained down, slicing through the sand. Explosions lit the night. Lyra stumbled, and Ethan grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a rock. The drone hovered closer, its light focusing on them. Ethan aimed his rifle and fired, 3 sharp bursts. The bullets hit the drone's sensor, making it jerk and spin wildly before crashing into the sand. But more came, dozens of them circling like wolves. Lyra clutched his sleeve. They won't stop. They're linked to the ship above. I can disrupt them. But I need time. How much? She closed her eyes. 2 minutes. Then you've got one, Ethan said, reloading. He stepped out from behind the rock and fired at the drones. Red beams flashed around him, missing by inches. His visor cracked again, sparks flying. He rolled across the sand, shot another drone, and ducked as one exploded above him. The heat burned through his armor, but he didn't stop. Behind him, Lyra raised her hands. Blue energy surged around her like lightning, spreading in waves through the desert. The drones paused mid-air, their lights flickering as the signal interference grew stronger. Ethan watched in awe. "You're doing it," he shouted. But Lyra was shaking, blood trickling from her nose. "I can't hold it. Just a little longer." The last few drones froze, their red lights dying. The desert fell silent. Ethan lowered his rifle, breathing heavily. Lyra collapsed to her knees, trembling. He ran to her, catching her before she hit the ground. "You did it," he whispered. Her voice was barely audible. "No, they're not gone. Just blind," Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Lyra looked up at the sky. Through the thin Martian clouds, he saw it too. Something massive moving in orbit. A dark shape, long and sleek, blocking out the stars. "The Mornspire," she said weakly. "Their flagship. They'll send others." Ethan stared at the ship, a cold dread crawling through him. "Then we hide. We find somewhere they can't track us." Lyra hesitated, then touched the side of his helmet. A faint light passed from her fingers into his visor. His display changed. New coordinates appeared, leading toward the canyons miles east. "There," she said softly. "Old human base, hidden. They never found it." Ethan nodded and lifted her gently. She was light as a feather, her body cold but steady. "Then that's where we're going." As he carried her through the endless desert, the faint hum of the Mornspire echoed above like a heartbeat in the sky. Inside the ship, alien eyes watched them from across the void. A commander with silver skin and burning red pupils stared at Ethan's image on a holographic screen. His voice was calm, emotionless. "He has the traitor," he said. "Prepare the hunters. Bring them both." Back on the surface, Ethan glanced up at the sky, sensing the danger he couldn't see. He didn't know that the same aliens who had destroyed his life were now tracking his every move. He looked down at Lyra's pale face. She was fragile, broken, but somehow she made him feel alive again. For the first time in years, Ethan had something to protect, and for the aliens above, that meant war. The canyons of Mars stretched like scars across the land, deep, silent, and endless. The red dust had settled, leaving the night cold and heavy. Ethan Cole trudged through the narrow path, his boots sinking into fine sand, the weight of exhaustion pressing on him. Lyra lay weak in his arms, her skin still glowing faintly blue beneath her torn suit. Every sound echoed in the canyon, the crunch of his steps, the rasp of his breath, the faint hum from the sky above. The Mornspire was still up there, orbiting silently like a vulture watching its prey. Ethan could feel its shadow even without looking. When he finally reached the hidden human base, it felt like stepping back into a ghost story. The entrance was buried beneath layers of rock and forgotten machines. Rusted doors creaked open after years of silence. Inside, the stale air smelled of dust and metal. Old banners still hung on the walls, symbols of the Human Defense Corps, now nothing but fading memories. He laid Lyra on a cot, covered her with a blanket, and powered up the generator. The lights flickered weakly to life, revealing walls lined with data screens and equipment coated in dust. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. For a moment, he almost felt safe, but safety on Mars was an illusion. Lyra stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Where are we?" she asked softly. "An old listening post," Ethan said. "Built during the war. Nobody knows it still exists. You'll be safe here." Her gaze drifted over the old human symbols. "Safe," she repeated almost sadly. "No one is safe. Not from the truth," he frowned. "What truth?" She looked at him for a long moment as if deciding whether to trust him. "You don't remember, do you?" she whispered. Ethan blinked. Remember what? Lyra reached out and touched his temple. The moment her fingers brushed his skin, a sharp pain shot through his skull. Images exploded in his mind, flashes of light, alien voices, screams. He staggered back, clutching his head. What are you doing? Showing you what they made you forget, she said, her voice shaking. The world around him vanished. He was standing in a white lab, surrounded by strange machines. His body felt heavy, restrained. He saw humans in armor, faces blank, eyes glowing faint blue, like his own reflection in the glass. And there were aliens, Lyra's kind, watching from behind thick walls, taking notes, experimenting. He saw his own hands covered in blood. Saw himself holding a weapon that pulsed with unnatural light. Then a voice echoed in his head, a cold alien tone. Subject 47, neural control stable. Proceed with execution. In front of him stood another alien, taller, with markings like Lyra's, but darker. The alien raised his hand in surrender, but Ethan's body moved on its own. The weapon fired. The alien fell, Ethan screamed. The memory shattered, and he collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. His vision blurred, sweat running down his face. Lyra knelt beside him, tears in her eyes. That was my brother, she whispered. Ethan stared at her in horror. No, that's not possible. I didn't. You did, she said quietly. But it wasn't your fault. They used you. You were one of their human experiments, a soldier built to obey their will. He shook his head violently. I fought them. I killed them. Lyra looked away. Yes, because they programmed you to. Ethan felt the ground vanish beneath him. Everything he believed, his hatred, his memories, his guilt, it was all built on lies. He wasn't a survivor. He was a weapon. He staggered to his feet, pacing like a man trapped in a nightmare. Why would they do this? Why use humans? Lyra's voice trembled. Because you were strong. Because your kind had something ours lost. A will that even control could not fully break. They tried to merge it with our technology. You were their perfect soldier. Until you started remembering. Ethan's fists tightened. That's why they destroyed my squad. They didn't want survivors, Lyra nodded. And that's why they buried me. I tried to stop the project. I tried to save you. Silence filled the room. Ethan sat down, staring at the floor, his mind spinning. The faces of his dead comrades flashed before him. Men and women who never knew they were puppets. Rage boiled inside him, but so did sorrow. I killed your brother, he said finally, voice shaking. How can you even look at me? Lyra's eyes shimmered with tears. Because I saw what they did to you. I saw the pain they caused. My brother would have understood. He died trying to end it too. Ethan buried his face in his hands. I'm not human anymore, he whispered. Lyra reached out and gently touched his arm. You are more human than anyone I've met, she said softly. Because you still feel guilt. Machines don't. He looked at her, and for the first time he saw not an alien but someone broken just like him. Two souls from different worlds scarred by the same monsters. Before he could speak, the lights flickered. The bass trembled as a low rumble echoed through the canyon. Ethan grabbed his rifle and checked the scanner. His blood ran cold, multiple heat signatures approaching fast. Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. They're here. Ethan clenched his jaw. Then they'll wish they weren't. Outside, the ground split open as alien transports descended from the sky. The hunters had found them, and this time Ethan wasn't running. He was ready to remember who he really was, human or not. The night sky above the canyon burned red again. Alien ships hovered low, their engines rumbling like thunder across the empty plains. Inside the old human base, alarms screamed and lights flickered wildly. Ethan Cole slammed a fresh power cell into his rifle and glanced at Lyra, who stood frozen near the console, her face pale and distant. They've locked onto us, Ethan said. We need to move now. But Lyra didn't move. She was staring at the main screen, lines of alien symbols scrolling faster than human eyes could follow. Her hands trembled. It's too late, she whispered. They're not just tracking us. They've activated the betrayal code. Ethan frowned. What the hell is that? She turned toward him slowly. It's a failsafe.
For the experiments.
For you. Before he could ask, pain exploded behind his eyes. His vision blurred, and a sharp buzzing filled his head like 1,000 knives digging into his mind. He dropped his rifle, falling to one knee, clutching his skull. Ethan! Lyra shouted, rushing to him. Fight it. Don't let them in. He could barely hear her. A cold mechanical voice echoed inside his head, alien, emotionless, commanding. Subject 47, directive, eliminate the traitor. Complete the purge. Ethan's body jerked violently. His eyes flashed blue, the same eerie light he'd seen in the memories. His arm moved on its own, reaching for his weapon. No, he groaned. I can't stop it. Lyra backed away, tears welling in her eyes. They've reactivated your neural link. You're not in control anymore. He stood up, trembling, his rifle aimed directly at her. Every muscle in his body screamed to resist, but the alien programming inside him burned like fire. Run, he growled through gritted teeth. Lyra shook her head, her voice breaking. I'm not leaving you again. A single tear fell from her cheek as she reached out, pressing her glowing hand to his chest. A surge of blue light flashed between them. Ethan gasped, his body shaking violently. For a moment, the alien control wavered. Stop fighting me, she cried. Listen to yourself. The memories came flooding back. His squad, his screams, the experiments, the endless pain. The alien voice roared inside him, trying to drown it all out. Obey the code. Purge the infection. He fell to his knees, dropping the rifle, both hands gripping his head. Lyra pressed her forehead against his, whispering through tears. You're not a weapon, Ethan. You're human. You're you. With a final cry, Ethan slammed his fist into the floor, breaking the trance. The lights around him flickered, then stabilized. The glow in his eyes faded. He collapsed, gasping for air. Lyra held him close, trembling. It's over, she said softly, but Ethan shook his head. No, it's not. I saw something. In the code, a message, coordinates. Lyra frowned. Coordinates to what? The central control hub, he said. They're using it to erase every trace of the experiments, including us. Her breath caught. That means they'll destroy the planet. Ethan nodded grimly. We have to stop it. Before they could plan their next move, an explosion rocked the base. The ceiling cracked, dust falling in thick clouds. Alien soldiers poured through the broken doorway. Tall, armored, glowing with the same cold blue light. Their weapons hummed as they aimed. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand and dove behind a console. Energy blasts tore through the walls, lighting the room with deadly flashes. There's a tunnel behind the reactor, he shouted. Move! They sprinted through the smoke, the floor trembling under their feet. Ethan fired back, taking down one of the aliens, but another beam grazed his shoulder. Pain shot through him, but he didn't stop. Lyra reached the hatch and slammed her palm against the lock. It opened with a hiss, and they dropped into the dark tunnel below. The air down there was damp and stale. Their footsteps echoed endlessly as they ran. Finally, when the noise above faded, they stopped to catch their breath. Ethan leaned against the wall, blood dripping from his wound. You're hurt, Lyra said, moving closer. I've had worse, he muttered. She tore a piece of her sleeve and wrapped it around his arm. For a moment, their eyes met. The fear between them softened into something else, something fragile, almost human. But before either could speak, Lyra's wristband beeped faintly. She looked down and her face went pale. They've traced us again, she whispered. We can't stay together. If I stay near you, they'll find you faster. Ethan grabbed her wrist. No, I'm not letting you go out there alone. She smiled sadly. You already saved me once. Now it's my turn. He shook his head, voice cracking. Lyra, don't. She leaned in and pressed her forehead against his. Trust me. Then she stepped back, activated a cloaking device, and vanished into thin air. The faint echo of her voice lingered in the tunnel. Find the hub, Ethan. End this. Before they end everything. Ethan stood alone, his breath shaking. The silence felt heavier than the world above. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to move forward. As he walked deeper into the tunnel, the alien voice whispered faintly in his mind again. But this time, it wasn't a command. It was fear. The human remembers, and somewhere far ahead, Lyra was already moving through the red deserts, heading straight toward the heart of the alien machine. Neither of them knew if they'd ever see each other again. But both carried the same thought. The only way to survive was to face the truth they'd both helped create. The Martian dawn rose like blood over the horizon, painting the desert in shades of fire. The wind howled through the empty canyons, carrying the distant hum of engines. Ethan Cole moved fast, his boots crunching over the sand, his mind still echoing with Lyra's last words. She was gone, vanished into the red storm, but her voice stayed in his head like a heartbeat. Find the hub, Ethan. End this before they end everything. The coordinates she had given him glowed faintly on his visor. They pointed toward the northern wastelands, a forbidden zone marked uninhabitable by both human and alien records. That alone told him the truth. The aliens were hiding something there. Hours passed as Ethan crossed the dunes, driven by a mix of rage and purpose. He wasn't just a broken soldier anymore. He was a man chasing the truth buried beneath lies, and somewhere deep down, he knew Lyra was doing the same. Finally, he saw it. A massive crater in the distance, surrounded by alien structures half buried in the sand. Metallic spires jutted from the ground like black fangs, glowing faint blue under the morning light. At the center, a huge opening led underground, a gateway to the control hub. Ethan crouched behind a ridge, watching as patrols of alien soldiers moved around the entrance. Their armor shimmered with energy, their eyes glowing like fireflies. The sight ignited his old instincts. He checked his weapon, adjusted his gear, and began his descent. Inside the hub, the air was thick and cold. The walls pulsed faintly, alive with streams of data flowing through glowing veins of energy. The sound of machinery echoed from every direction, a deep mechanical heartbeat that seemed to pulse in time with his own. Ethan moved carefully, his rifle ready. He passed through corridors filled with strange pods, hundreds of them, lined neatly against the walls. He stopped at one, his breath catching. Inside floated a human body, eyes closed, wires running through the skull. Another and another. Men and women, soldiers, preserved like trophies. His stomach twisted. These weren't corpses, they were test subjects. People like him. Then he saw a reflection in the pod's glass. Lyra. He spun around, weapon raised. She stepped out of the shadows, her cloak flickering off. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned bright with determination. "You found it," she said softly. Ethan lowered his rifle. "I thought I lost you." "You almost did," she replied with a faint smile. "I came through the southern vents. The hub is worse than I imagined." She walked to the nearest pod and touched the glass gently. "They didn't stop experimenting after you escaped. They kept building. They're trying to merge our species permanently, mind to mind, flesh to machine." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then we destroy this place." Lyra nodded. "There's a central reactor deep below. If we overload it, the whole facility will collapse. But the system is alive. It'll fight back. Let it," Ethan said grimly. "I'm done running." Together they moved deeper into the hub. The corridors widened, filled with holographic displays showing alien soldiers, maps, and data. The deeper they went, the louder the hum grew, like a living beast breathing beneath the planet. At the reactor chamber, the air shimmered with heat. A massive core pulsed in the center, surrounded by alien control panels. Lyra approached the console, her fingers moving over glowing symbols. "I can access the system, but I'll need time to copy the data before we destroy it. The truth has to survive." Ethan positioned himself near the entrance, rifle aimed, scanning for movement. "Do it fast." "We won't have long," she nodded, her focus intense. Blue energy streamed from her hands into the console. The lights flickered as alarms began to sound. Ethan's visor lit up with red markers, hostiles incoming. "Lyra, they're coming," he shouted. "Keep them away," she called back. The first wave of aliens stormed the room, firing plasma bolts. Ethan dove behind cover, returning fire. The chamber exploded with light and smoke. He dropped 3 soldiers, then another, but more kept coming. The floor shook as explosions rocked the structure. Lyra screamed, "Almost there." Ethan fired again, but a blast hit him square in the chest. He crashed to the floor, gasping for air. His armor cracked, the pain searing through his body. He looked up. An alien commander stood over him, weapon aimed. Before the shot came, a surge of blue light erupted from the console. Lyra turned, her eyes glowing like stars. She raised her hands, releasing a wave of energy that threw the alien across the room. The lights dimmed. The reactor core pulsed wildly. "I did it," Lyra shouted. "The data's safe, but the overload has started." Ethan struggled to stand. "Then we run!" Lyra hesitated, glancing at the console. "If I leave now, the failsafe might stop the explosion. Someone has to stay to trigger it manually." He froze. "No, not again." She looked at him, her expression soft, almost peaceful. "You gave me a second chance at life. Let me give you one too." Before he could stop her, she pressed her hand to the control panel. The energy field around the reactor flared, sealing her inside. "Lyra!" Ethan pounded the glass. Don't do this. She smiled faintly, her voice echoing through the intercom. Ethan, tell them what we did here. Tell them we fought back. The light grew blinding. The walls cracked. The whole structure began to collapse. Ethan ran toward the exit as the explosion consumed the chamber. Fire and dust chased him through the tunnels. He dove into an escape pod just as the hub imploded behind him. Through the small window he watched as the ground split open, releasing a wave of light that swallowed the desert. The entire alien base vanished beneath the storm of red dust. And somewhere inside that storm, Lyra was gone, sacrificed to save both their worlds. Ethan sat in silence as the pod soared into the dark sky, the last of the light fading behind him. His fists clenched, his heart breaking. But in that moment he knew what he had to do. Lyra's truth would not die with her. The escape pod tore through the red sky like a falling star. Fire streaked behind it as it crashed into the barren desert, carving a deep scar into the dust. When the smoke cleared, Ethan Cole crawled out, coughing, his armor cracked and blackened. Every muscle in his body screamed in pain, but he didn't stop. He turned toward the horizon, toward the place where the alien hub once stood. Now there was nothing. Only a vast crater glowing faintly blue beneath the rising sun. The wind howled across the wasteland, carrying the smell of metal and ash. Lyra was gone. Ethan sank to his knees. For a long time he said nothing. He just stared at the crater, the silence pressing down on him like a weight. He had fought wars, faced monsters, survived death itself, but nothing hurt like this. She had stayed behind to save everyone. To save him. A soft breeze brushed against his face, carrying a faint whisper. Tell them we fought back. Her voice echoed in his mind, gentle but strong. He closed his eyes, clenching his fists. I will, he whispered. Slowly, he forced himself to stand. The pod systems were still active. Among the wreckage, a faint blue light blinked, a small data crystal glowing inside a containment case. Lyra's last message. He picked it up carefully, the light reflecting in his tired eyes. You did it, he murmured. You saved the truth. He climbed a nearby ridge, the desert stretching endlessly before him. The alien ships had disappeared, retreating after the explosion. But he knew it wouldn't last. The High Command would erase what happened here, unless he made sure the galaxy heard it first. He opened the pod's communications array and inserted the data crystal. A holographic screen flickered to life, showing Lyra's recording. Her face appeared calm, bright, alive. To whoever receives this message, this is Lyra of the Aelthar Dominion. I was part of a program meant to erase humanity. But in that plan, we found something stronger than fear. We found hope. The humans we enslaved, the soldiers we controlled, they remembered who they were. They fought back. This truth must not die. Not with me. Not with him. Her voice cracked at the end, but her eyes glowed with quiet strength. Ethan felt his throat tighten. He transmitted the message across every open frequency. The alien networks, old human relays, even pirate signals drifting between planets. Go, he said under his breath. Let them hear her. Let them all hear her. The transmission spread like wildfire. Within hours, the story of the traitor alien and the human weapon reached colonies, rebel fleets, and hidden worlds. Across the galaxy, people began to question the lies they had been told. Some called it blasphemy. Others called it hope. Ethan watched the skies as the signal traveled. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. Days passed. The storms quieted. He built a small camp near the crater. Nothing more than a shelter, a fire, and a pile of memories. Sometimes, when the wind was calm, he could almost hear her laugh in the rustling dust. He opened the data crystal one last time, scrolling through its contents. Among the scientific files and alien schematics, he found something unexpected. A short personal log. The title simply read, "For Ethan." He hesitated, then pressed play. Lyra's voice filled the air, soft and trembling. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it. But don't let that be the end. I've seen the truth in you, Ethan. The humans think they're broken, but they're not. You're the bridge between what was and what could be. Promise me you'll live. Not just survive, live. The message ended with silence. Ethan stared at the horizon, tears burning in his eyes. I promise, he whispered. That night he climbed to the top of the ridge, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Aelthar Dominion would hear Lyra's voice. Somewhere others would rise because of it. And if they came for him again, he'd be ready. not as a weapon, but as a man who had nothing left to lose. He lifted his head toward the stars. "You wanted the truth," he said quietly. "Now you'll get it." He activated his beacon, sending one last coded transmission to the surviving human colonies, a rallying signal. A call to arms. Across space, the message repeated endlessly. They used us. They controlled us no more. Humanity remembers. The stars seemed to flicker brighter as if answering his call, and then, just as he turned to leave, his communicator crackled faintly. Static filled the air, then a voice, soft, familiar. "Ethan." He froze, eyes wide. The signal was weak, breaking through interference. "I made it." For a moment he couldn't breathe. "Lyra," he whispered. The signal glitched, but her voice returned, faint but real. "The explosion didn't reach me. I'm hurt, but alive. There's so much more to do." Ethan smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. "You never quit, do you?" Her voice was soft, almost teasing. "Neither do you, soldier." He looked up at the sky where a small silver ship streaked across the stars, its light shimmering through the thin Martian clouds. His heart swelled with something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The broken man stood tall against the red wind, gripping his rifle as the ship descended toward him. The war wasn't over, but for the first time he wasn't fighting it alone, because somewhere between man and alien, between sorrow and survival, they had found something worth saving. And as the dust swirled around him, Ethan Cole walked toward the landing light, no longer the ghost of a war, but the beginning of a legend.